So I figured I'd make this video. Had a customer return one of my Grundfos pumps. Maybe it's bad out of the box. Maybe it was wrong size, wrong purchase for the depth. I don't know really what it is. But I've got all of these on the shelf, and I'm going to go ahead and take this out, and we're going to stick it in the test tank to see if it works. If it doesn't work, then I'm going to go ahead and just send him a brand new pump, and this will be a warranty claim. If not, regardless, he paid for shipping to send it back, and I'll talk to him on the phone to see if we need to size him a different pump, because this is a 22 gallon a minute SQ190. Typically this is my irrigation pump. So I really need to figure out with him to know what depth he put the pump and what water level is in that well. But I'm going to go ahead and pull it out now, and we're going to test it to see if it in fact was bad, because he said it worked for 3 days and then it quit working. So we're going to go ahead and open it up and see what happens. I've got the SQ190 sitting here taken out of the box on the workbench. Had to go ahead and strip out the wires again. Now this pump, unlike most, this has an 1.5 inch discharge to accommodate the 22 gallon minute flow that is capable of flowing. It's 19 degrees outside where we are. This pump has been in the water, so when I pulled it out, it had water in it, which kind of makes me nervous. So I'm going to let this pump sit in here in the room, 70 degree ambient air temperature, to make sure, just in case, that any of the water in the pump stack that may be frozen is unfrozen. Kind of makes me nervous, but regardless, just wanted to add that. I'm filling up my test tank now. We're going to bring that in here, set it in there, let it sit for a minute, get it all set up. We'll test amp draw, we'll test flow, and we'll see if this thing works or if it indeed is bad. So here is the pump test setup, done differently, and a little bit different in my other videos. Now I've got a dip style switch, so it's a lot easier to cut this thing on and off. So let's go ahead, turn it on, and see what happens. We're going to be using this little amp meter, little amp tester. These are the #1 tool you need if you want to diagnose to see if your well pump's good or bad. All right, let's go ahead and turn it on and see what happens. Oh, that was not a good sign. 0. Oh, I've got it on voltage. All right, I'm going to turn it off. And that's 0.00. So the decimal starts here. So theoretically, this pump should pull about 9 amps or a little bit better than that. And it didn't register much of anything. I don't know if you heard that, but it sounded like it went, yep. Okay, let's try it again. Listen carefully. Huh, nothing. 1/10 of an amp. Not even 1/10 of an amp. Okay, this is looking like it's a locked rotor. So possibly trash in the impellers, or possibly just a bad motor. It's very uncommon to receive a pump bad out of the box, but we have seen it with the amount of pumps that we deal with here. I'm going to say in a 2-year span, we typically get 1 bad pump out of the box. So out of about 150 pumps, maybe 1 will be bad. And out of those, a lot of times it was either dropped or was hit with a forklift, or there's a whole host of things that could be the reason for a bad pump. I have seen some where the wells are just so filled with sand and silt that it fills up the pump stack, the impellers, and you know, it binds up the tolerances inside the pump. Okay, let's try one more time, and let's listen. You hear that? Yep. She's trying to spin, but it won't. So this pump is faulty. I'm going to go ahead and give the customer a warranty claim, talk to them, send them a brand new free pump. And I think since this is an SQ190, let's see here, SQ190, we got 5 sitting here on the shelf, so we are good to go. I love Grundfos pumps. I have sold over 100 online to customers all across the United States and Canada, and this will be the first that has had an issue. So less than 1% is what I can say on that. I'm not going to be somebody who doesn't show you the bad, because the bad, that's life. Stuff happens, you know. I think this is the second pump that I've ever had returned. The first one I had returned, which is here, we'll test that later on in this video. This one here, this is an SQ200, and the reason why they sent it back was because they had a very deep static level in their well, and that pump wouldn't shut off the pressure switch. So they sent it back. We made the correction, sold them an SQ290, which that pump is capable of running at 300 feet, which they ended up installing the SQ200 at, I believe, 240 feet, but they had a 160 foot static level. So that pump was struggling to shut off the pressure switch. So understandable, mistakes happen, especially when it's DIY situation like that. But it just, those are those weird, rare case scenarios that you just don't know. And me, I try to do the best I can to help people, answering emails and questions. And sometimes it slips my mind to ask them, you know, do you know what your static level is? Most people don't know what their static water level is. And that's why I have this chart here with these depths and these pressures, because this is how much pressure it takes to lift water from a 300 foot level. So if we took into account the customer who sent back the 200, his water level was at 160 foot. So between these, we're looking at roughly, you know, 70, 75 PSI, plus the 60 PSI that it has to overcome for the pressure switch. So what is that? That's 135 PSI. Well, I don't know what an SQ200 3/4 horsepower 10 gallon minute pump is capable of doing as far as maximum pressure. And Grundfos is really good about figuring out what their max head is, and it'll actually tell you on these pumps what its maximum lifting capability is from the water level depth. So let's go ahead. We know that this pump is bad, so I'm going to go ahead, disconnect it all, disconnect my wiring, unplug my 240 volts out of the wall, so we're safe there. And I'm going to go ahead, prep that SQ200, put it on the test tank, and we'll see what it does. Because I'm curious myself, and we'll compare the numbers from their flow chart to what the actual you know, pressure and flow rate is, because that's what this is. It's a flow gauge. So all right, let's get that wrapped up, and we'll do another pump test. Now we have the SQ200 in there. I label these on my website SQ200, but the true product item number is 10 SQ190 which makes it a 3/4 horsepower 10 gallon a minute pump. This is kind of a smaller pump. In my opinion, it's good for about 100 to 120, 130 foot in a well. It would be our equivalent to like a 1/2 horsepower, 10 gallon a minute, 4-inch pump. So these right here, these numbers are basically off of the flow chart. I wrote them down to where it was a little bit easier to see, because you just can't see the flow chart numbers with as many as they give you. And we're going to try to see what this pump will do, amp draw, pressure wise, and flow rate, because this is gallon per minute right here. And we'll see how far they correlate with one another. Now, take in mind, this was a used pump. This was a return. So I'm not sure. This could be similar to what we just experienced. But I was told that it runs, and when I got it back, I bump tested it, and it did bump test. So I know the pump spins. Typically on returns like this, I do not sell that pump. That pump will not go out the door. It will not be labeled back in a box and sold to anyone online. This will be used for one of my personal local installs. Typically, if I install a liner, a 4-inch liner, then this pump will go in. But only if it falls into the category of, is it going to be in 100 foot or 120 foot deep? This pump was only used by the person who returned it for about 4 or 5 days, until they called me and said, hey, something's not acting right. And we came up with the conclusion that the pump couldn't work with the static water level that it was at. So let's go ahead, turn this on. Let's see. We've got our amp draw here. Now, one beautiful thing I love about Grundfos, especially when they work, is the slow start. So if you've ever watched any of my other pump test videos, you notice how violent the 4-inch pumps move around. That is the #1 selling feature of these Grundfos pumps, which is soft start. So check this out. We're going to go ahead and turn it on, and let's see how much this pump moves. Isn't that cool? it ramps up nice and slow. So right now, we're completely open, and we're flowing almost 9 gallons a minute. So pressure, when I knock this back, that's basically giving us false head pressure, which is kind of going to dictate the depth of your water level. Not the depth of your pump, but the depth of your water level. I know people get that mixed up. Like, oh, my pump's at 200 foot. But if your water level is only at 30 foot, you're only lifting water from the 30 foot mark. As you use more, that's when your water level goes down in your well, and the pump has to create more pressure to lift water from a deeper depth. Okay, now that that's explained, and that's what all these numbers correlate to, the pressure it takes to lift water from what depth. And then you got to add on your operating pressure, which is 50 or 60 psi to that number to turn off the pressure switch. So let's do the first one. We're gonna get 40 psi at 180 foot and see if it equals 5.4 gallons per minute. So we got to figure out 180 foot. That's gonna be roughly, we'll call it 80 psi, and then we got to add another 40 to that. So that's 120 psi. And I just don't think that this pump's going to do that. Alright, let's go. Alright, let's see. We're at 60 psi right now. Typical operating pressure, and we're still at 8.5 gallons per minute. Let's go to 80. We're at 6.5 gallons per minute. We're at 100. We're at 4.5 gallons per minute. And see, that's 120 right there. It says 0, so I've deadheaded it. Alright, so let's just, for safety's sake, that is 110 psi, and that's 3 gallons per minute. So 40 and 180, got to do the math on that. Yeah, so it's not going to be able to satisfy a pressure switch beyond about 150 foot. And it's only pulling 4 amps. Crazy. Okay, well, we tested it, we know it works. It just doesn't work at the depth that the flow chart says it does, which there's a lot of variables there, so I can't complain. I always spec this pump out for 100 foot, so 100, 120, 140 max. All right, let's go ahead and cut it off. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and end the video here. I have been waiting a few months to do these pump reviews. I received the SQ190 today, and about 3 months ago is when I got the return on the SQ200. While the product number 190 and 200 are so close to one another, they are nowhere near the same style pump. One's a 1 horsepower, one's a 3/4, one was a 10 gallon minute pump, and the other was a 22 gallon minute pump. Real world, real life scenarios like this happen. Bad pumps out of the box happen. That pump went all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast, and then back from the West Coast to the East Coast to return it to me. So there's no telling if it was dropped or if it truly was just bad out of the box. We just don't know. So that will be my first failure of a Grundfos pump, brand new. So it's not really disheartening, because all the pumps that we've installed in the past, which were Franklin Electric 4-inch pumps here at our business, we always will bump test them on the workbench before we install them. And we did that because for a period of time, maybe, you know, a few times a year, they were failing out of the box. So it's not something that is totally uncommon, but for Grundfos, To me, it is. But that being said, over 100 have gone out my door, and this will be the first one. So less than 1% is something that I can live with. And like I told the customer through email, I said, I doubt it's the pump. I've had 5 other email conversations with people, and every time we found out that it was the wire going down the well. So in this instance, of course, I believe that it was probably the wire. But that's why I had them send it back, and I can do my own testing here. You know, I am not sponsored by Grundfos. They have no affiliation with my testing. My testing is for me and my purposes, and for you, the viewer. So I'm going to give you real world, real life numbers and scenarios. We don't always just post the good, because sometimes we need to show the bad, show the situations where things don't go quite according to plan, you know. So one thing I try to pride myself on with my business and my company, H2Omechanic.com, is that if you have a issue like this, I'm going to honor it, because why not? You know, that's how you build a good company name. Like Grundfos, that's why I sell their product, because they are such a top tier, top shelf pump brand. That's why their costs reflect it in the cost of their pumps versus other pumps. And you can look at it. They're smaller, they're half the weight. They have 2 built-in safety features, soft start and then auto shut off if the well runs dry. Everything about a Grundfos I love. But situations like this, where you get one bad out of the box, it's not honest of me to not show it to you. I don't want that to make you worry about buying a Grundfos pump and think, oh, it may not work. Guess what? If it doesn't and you buy it through me, I'm going to mail you one right out as soon as I receive it. So, you know, I had another customer, and he's probably watching this video. He opted not to buy the Grundfos through me and opted to buy it through Amazon. Gets the pump, and he runs a cycle stop valve, and I think the pump died on him in 11 months. And now I recommended he not use the cycle stop valve, and I thought that he was one of my customers, and I was ready to issue him a warranty on a pump that he didn't even buy from me. And then he corrected me and said, no, I'm sorry, I didn't buy the pump from you. I found it cheaper elsewhere. So he's got to go get a warranty claim through that situation. And then I had another person who opted not to buy a pump through my website, and they ended up doing it because they bought a pump from Amazon, a Grundfos, and when it was shipped to them, somebody had did something not so nice and shoved a used well pump in that box. So when they got it, they opened it up and they got a used well pump that was bad. So somebody did something shady, bought a pump online, a Grundfos, put it on, shoved their old pump in the box, and then mailed it back to get a return. And I think Amazon doesn't check that stuff, so I don't know. But it's just, those are crazy real world scenarios that most people don't see. So that was the idea of this video. I want to show you the truth, be honest with you. I always try to be honest with all my customers. So the video is getting a little long. If you want me to do more pump test videos in the future, let me know in the comments. If you want to place an order through me, we sell only quality products, only quality pumps. Anything that does go out the door, if you have a situation like this, I will be happy to warranty it. Most of the time we're going to walk through a couple steps, or I'll give you my phone number and we'll diagnose it together on the phone. I'm sure a lot of people that I have talked to will be watching this. If we have had a conversation on the phone, drop it in the comments section and let people know how your experience was. And if you want to buy a pump from me and you want me to do a pump test on it and, you know, test it, review it before I send it out to you, that's really going to be the only way that I'm going to be able to test like an SQ290 or an SQ330. Those are over $1,000 pumps, and I don't feel safe opening them up and testing them and sending them to a customer and have them think like, oh, you know, why is this open? Why is this wet? This, that, and the other thing. I want you to give me the okay beforehand, before we make a video on it, before we test it. You know, if I'm going to install a pump in a local well, then yeah, I'll do that. And that's what I'm going to do with that SQ200. There'll always be that job where someone says, I can't afford a brand new pump right now. And I'll say, I've got the perfect pump for you. And they're not going to pay full price for that pump because that pump is used. And that's the way I need to look at it. Whether it's got a week of runtime or a year and a half of runtime, I need to basically sell that pump at cost to where the customer gets something new. I can still warranty it. I know it's a good pump. I just tested it, so I know what it's capable of doing, and I'll know what depth to put it at. Most of the time, that's going to go on a 4-inch liner, and it's going to be at 100 foot. So as long as it goes there, it'll live the next 15 years of its life, and it'll be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll see y'all on the next one.